Which is closer to death? Numbness or pain? Which is a fuller expression of life? Numbness or pain? Welcome back to the Questing Chiropractor podcast. I am Greg Venning. I'm your guide on this gorgeous journey where we are going to be helping you today to find a more attractive way of being in your practice so that your practice can be a reflection of what makes your heart sing, and then you can structure your flow around that so you can serve as many people as possible and have the impact you want to on the world. And today we have Mark Postles with us again. And I like to think of Mark as the thought leader in chiropractic. His wisdom is deep, it is powerful, it is profound, and it is very, very practical. So today we're going to look at the power of the attractive practice, how to explore the world through other people's perspectives to create breakthroughs for you and the people you serve, to allow people to explore the rules that they live by unconsciously so that they can make better choices going ahead. We look at the power of quality questions and how they lead to quality answers, but quality actions as well. And also the power of not knowing, and also the value of intolerance. So this is a powerful conversation. Hang on tight. Here we go. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vital, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story. Welcome back to the Questing Chiropractor, and today we have Mark Postles with us, the amazing Mark Postles, the gorgeous Mark Postles. Mark, welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Greg. It's great to be back.
Yeah, always good to have you with us. Always such rich, deep, conceptual understanding of the world that comes through your wisdom, Mark. And today we're going to talk about the transformational power of attraction. And this is a really, really important thing, and something that I've learned a lot from you about, and I know has really transformed my practice and a lot of the lives that I'm blessed to serve. So where would you start if somebody had never really considered the idea of their practice being attractive or creating attractive transformation? Where would you start for people?
Well, I'd start by addressing the brain-based nature of our practice, the brain-based nature of our every action, in fact, and looking at the 4 key brain functions. So with that, going to the innate model, IN8 model.com, and doing a simple quiz that will give you an indication of where your preferences lie. And so you can start to get a reference point there. So these are very rich and time-tested patterns, and they've been echoed throughout the history of mankind. And that's how I stumbled across it and started putting them all on a spreadsheet and seeing that, hey, these functions are neurological functions, even though they've been taken into archetypes and numbers and animals and insects and all sorts of labels. But the point being is that we have 4 essential components interacting with each other within our brain function. So the names that we've given this are based on the functional components, and that is the first one being attract, and this is our ability to connect with people and to establish credibility. So that then allows people to come into agreement with us. So we have agreement as being the reference frame of all that we do. So, when we have agreement, we can then start and continue care with continuous agreements as they get maybe bigger and more profound over time. So firstly, recognizing that we start with baby steps and then we go into larger agreements with people as time goes by. So this goes then from struggling to get new practice members to an automated inflow of ideal new people, because as people trust us and they have agreement with us and they have hope that's been realized as we work with them, then they're willing to send their friends in. So that's the first element, is to have this attractive factor there. And it doesn't just stop there. It doesn't stop when a new person comes in. It goes all the way through. Every aspect of our practice must be attractive. And that's certainly the topic of the most recent book on this particular topic. So we can unpack this a little bit further, because what happens then is we go into a state of nurture. So people come in, and this is how we let people know, or let them feel they're safe, they're secure, and they're certain, because we have some predictable, reliable phenomena that occur. So there's no big surprises. And that allows them then to feel comfortable to commit to ever increasing levels of agreement. So the result of that is that we go from constantly putting out fires because people are jumpy to effective systems and processes and procedures. So that then allows people to engage with us, and for us to be able to deliver our services and to be connected with them, to be intimate, to have relevant communication. And that then allows those people to take on a role within this tribe of like-minded people within our practice. It goes from constantly changing our tactics to a duplicatable clinical excellence. And this is a huge topic, which I'm sure most chiropractors realize, that this art form that we have called chiropractic is an ongoing process of increasingly becoming within our technique. So this, and it must be duplicable. And so others then can run on it. And this is the leverage factor. So this is the fourth component, gone from the right frontal cortex to the left basa, to the right basa, to now up to the left frontal, which we want to expand on it. And this is about empowering ourselves, our team, and our practice members to higher levels of effectiveness. And it's about allowing us to always be in an ever increasing quest for the next thing, the next iteration, the next reinvention of ourselves. So this goes from being the boss of doing everything to empowered leverage. So that's sort of the summary of it on a thumbnail there, Greg. I think it'd be useful maybe to look at the transformation in terms of pre-post, and
Yeah.
what it was and what it can be.
Yeah. So for listeners, let's recap, because what Mark's just given us in that thumbnail is really rich, and is, in my experience of teaching this to people, is sometimes overwhelming, but actually there's a simplicity behind it. And so if we just revisit the simplicity, is we go from attract, to which is based on agreement, to nurture, which is based on safety, to delivery, which is based on excellence and reproducible excellence, to then expand, which is based on leverage and really making things bigger and newer and better. And so attract, nurture, deliver, and expand. So those are the four brain-based components of really how we see reality, how we do reality. And your practice as a subset of that is really important, that your practice can follow this neurologically derived flow, this neurological flow, this brain-based practice is really powerful to really start seeing things in those four elements.
Yeah, certainly is. So if we were to look at, without an attractive factor, how would the practice be? And maybe the listeners could make a note of this. There could be some areas here, it's just like tick, 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 sure, got that under control. And other areas like, oh, okay, fine, we've got a little work to do here, and we need to maybe change a few things. So if we have a look from the position that without the attractive practice, your practice is predetermined by your market. In other words, the external factors control what is happening within your practice. You're run by the practice members or the patients. You're run by the economy. You're run by the weather. You're run by every external element you can consider. Whereas with it, you have a practice that's an expression of your choices. And you realize that everything that you choose manifests, that the thoughts that we choose manifest, the behaviors that we choose manifest. And so if we look at the manifestation, it could be lack of new people, it could be a lack of stick rate within the people, it could be lack of education with people. The choices are limited, whatever. They're our choices. That's the result of our function. So if we can take ownership for that, that then is a huge step forward in terms of maybe rectifying the situation. So if we took another one, like without the attractive factor, we'd say, well, people's personality is just set. They just don't get it. They're just an idiot. They just are slow. They're fast, whatever. They don't care. There's a label that we put onto it as compared to looking at people from the chiropractic context, which people's personality is unlimited. And we can say the same for behaviors in that their neurology drives their behaviors. So their behaviors aren't set. The behaviors will change. And they have an ability to take on different behaviors. And people are really smart. And when there's less interference to their system, then they will take on different behaviors, which will give different results. So one of the traps of this then is that we try to make others work our way. And we could see that this could be the attractive factor consideration, that others seem to be doing things in a way that we consider to be wrong.
So this is one of the other places it plays out, is when our teams aren't functioning well, when there's not the culture we want within our teams and our practice, then there's also that's the lack of this clear, compelling, attractive factor, isn't it?
It is. It is. And when we appreciate others' ways, then we start to see the gaps that lie within the construct that we have. And so then we can explore that one with curiosity. We dig deeper into that from a state of innocence, and we can ask questions that allow for us to get a greater or richer understanding of how that person ticks. So then the way that they do it is not necessarily wrong, it's simply another way. And we can then work out how that could work within our business. And there's many breakthroughs that we make in our practices with our people, both our team and our practice members, by being willing to experience that behavior that's not your behavior, not our behavior, it's their behavior and their way of thinking. And probably that sort of is dependent then on whether we feel comfortable with people who are unlike us or like us. In other words, there's an awareness there before, without being attractive and be attracting and being attracted, that we sort of feel comfortable with people who are like us, but we don't feel comfortable with people who are unlike us. And so if we expand ourselves and transform into this state of being where we see that, hey, this person is very unlike me, they see the world very differently, and that is really cool. I love it. But it's like using all the colors of the color palette to do a painting rather than just in black and white, you know?
This is where we shift, Mark, in my experience of being set on, like, I need to find the ideal person, and the ideal person is only like this. Now, I get that in marketing, it's useful to do that to know where you're going to go. But if we think of, I only want to see people like this, to the transformation on the other side of that for Questers is every person is your ideal person.
Yes. And every person is in a state of becoming, including us. So, we could have, and I'm sure the listeners will resonate with this, the most unlikely person comes in probably from some social media ad or a Google click, and they're in the office, they're totally like a fish out of water. They don't understand what's going on. They probably don't even see it as being a prophetic thing that they're there. They just want to get a certain thing fixed and be out of there. But something happens with that person. And as we work with them, and we do that with permission, we do that with agreement, then they start to transform. They start to ask better quality questions. And it's not that we want them to change. And this is the paradox of this. We're not there to change anything. Everything is absolutely perfect. The innate expression of an individual is perfect for that individual right now. So it is about allowing that person to be, and at the same time giving them the space to become. And obviously, as a junior, as a young kid, as a toddler, one would want to put in rules around that. And that's what nurture is, to keep them safe, keep them protected, at the same time allowing them to spread their wings and gradually test the world in different ways. So recognizing that our rules, on the contrary to applying to everyone, then starts to allow other people to have their own rules. And when people come into us, everyone has their own way of seeing the world. They have their own rules about how life is. And many of those rules haven't been challenged. They've just been assumed. And so our role then is to allow them the luxury of being able to explore those rules. And the question would be, are they useful? And with a appropriate context, then many rules that people have are not useful as it applies to their health and it applies to their worldview. So part of our job there is to create these little pattern interrupts there that allow people to cognate on their own rules and the usefulness or not of them.
Let's
So,
give our listeners a really concrete example of that. And one of the most common ones we'd probably come across in our practices is the rule that symptoms are bad.
yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? It's sort of like there's a right way and a wrong way to do health, and the symptoms are the bad way or the wrong way. And we then go from this position, well, there's always another way. Maybe symptoms are useful. And so, what do you mean they're useful? They're just a pain in the butt. They get them away. So it's a simple thing like, well, what's closer to death, numbness or pain? Oh, well, maybe numbness because it's the body losing sight of its comprehension of itself. So very simple things like that, or an example of injury is accompanied possibly with pain. And that's a useful thing. And so once a person gets a little bit confusion in that context, they start to see that, well, there's another way of looking at this. And that just comes little bit by little bit. And sometimes people take many months, years even,
Mm.
to cognate on these things. It's a day-to-day event of taking their polarized view of this is the right way, this is the wrong way, and giving them the options of seeing that there's another way. And this is the old Jewish proverb is if you have two choices, you've got a dilemma. But if you have a third choice, then you have true choice. And if that third way is one with another outcome associated with it, then that becomes really powerful for that person. They can start to see, okay, well, there's another way of looking at this thing.
Yeah, and that's useful for us to maintain that state of curiosity, that state of that quadrant one that you're talking about, the attractive space, and bring that into this nurture space, which is often about rightness and wrongness. And if we keep our curiosity, we can just hold a space where we don't have to be right and they have to be wrong or the other way around. Like you say, it's not the dilemma. That there's a third way here. There's another option of looking at it. Which one do you feel is useful for you right now?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
And
that
people feel safe there, and then they'll participate in that from there.
they will. The most powerful thing we can do for people is to ask questions and let them have the experience of finding out what is so for them. And if we ask them open questions, they will then have to search. They'll have to search their belief structures, their values, and their behavioral mechanisms in order to make sense of that. So, quality questions give quality, not only answers, but quality actions. And this is truly transformative. I think as learned people, which I think we are as chiropractors, we have a great amount of knowledge and often we see that as being our superpower, but in fact, it's not. It's often our Achilles heel. And I think with wisdom, we start to temper our use of knowledge as an instrument. And we start to enter that stage of being able to ask quality questions and being curious about things, which then empowers the person to seek out their own viewpoint, which is totally transformative in so many cases. And we're thinking, I'm talking just clinical situations that come up during the day. So I'm sick, I've got the cold, or I've got a flu. And it's like, well, are you sick or are you well? What's the response here? Maybe having a wellness expression. And that becomes problematic for the person who's stuck in the symptoms equals sick or mucus in the throat is bad. When we unpack that a little bit further, they're like, well, I don't know, and then so, well, just think about it. Just notice that, and you can move on. So knowing that if we plant seeds, the person will allow those seeds to germinate, and we don't have to force it. We don't have to tell them. We don't have to yell at them. We don't have to have tricks and tactics to make them understand. It is simply a little word like that that allows them to go deep and bring about their own as the time is right.
In that little dialogue that you played out there, there's this beautiful thing that happened. And I want to point this out to the listeners is if a person comes in, as Mark had the first time, and says, well, symptoms are bad, I'm sick, it's wrong. And you might suggest, well, maybe this is an expression of wellness or an expression of health. And the person suddenly goes, oh, I don't know. That has been a powerful shift from a state of them knowing to a state of them not knowing. And a not knowingness is a far more open, receptive, curious state that they're in. Please don't jump in and tell them the answer. Allow them to be in that state of not knowing, which is where their genius comes into play. And it can be uncomfortable because we often want to comfort the person by jumping in and providing the solution, providing the answer. And that's what we do. Like we often want people to feel comfortable, but their discomfort in that state, and put it this way, when I say discomfort, I don't mean pain and existential pain. Maybe they can get there, but it's just a state of that we've opened a charge and we've opened a loop and it hasn't been closed and they really want it closed. Allow them to spin that loop and allow them to close that in their own time, please. And it might take visit after visit. They might keep coming back to you going, what do you mean about that expression of health thing? And you go, well, I don't know. Like, what do you think about it? Oh, I went and read this thing and it says this. Oh, that's interesting. What else could it be? And keep that loop open. Yeah, thanks, Mark. That like just that little part of a person saying, I don't know, that's powerful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Open loops are very compelling. Some people, that drives them crazy. Well, just tell me the answer, just create finality, therefore I can move on. And it's sort of like, probably a reflection on our education system. You regurgitate what your teacher says and that agrees with the narrative, and then case closed. It's all over. It's fine. Tick, you got the mark, off you go. Whereas if you can create a sense of open inquiry and robust discussion, then that becomes, because it allows a person to make a shift. And I think too often we pull back from these challenging circumstances instead of engaging in the challenging circumstances. And I would say that's one part of the transformation, is that, rather than having tippy-toeing around in the practice and in our life, we lean into it. We engage in these circumstances, which allow us to have a greater insight into it. So, yeah. So, I mean, I guess the whole concept of separation is something that we are going through in our world at the moment, where it's me and us versus him and her and them, or whatever the pronoun happens to be, rather than being we together in collaboration. And I think the transformed nature of this is, if you look at the vitalistic nature of human beings, all of our cells work together in harmony, but they're very, very different. They have different functions and different outputs and require different amounts of energy and different amounts of nutrition and so forth. They live at different life spans and the like. We're there as cells of a body together in collaboration. We all resonate with the same impulse of life force that flows through us. And so I think if we can recognize that as individuals, we then can be more tolerant, but at the same time, less tolerant. In other words, you look at the body, you can have a very tolerant system that is getting sicker and sicker because of that tolerance. The white blood cells are very tolerant of the cute little viruses and bacteria that are eating it up. And that's not useful. At the same time, intolerance would be a very powerful thing for us to have, and we do have when we've got a well-functioning immune system. That's the paradox here, is that working together in collaboration, it doesn't mean to say everyone's happy and everyone gets a prize. It's like we work together in collaboration for the good of the whole, and we don't tolerate those things that are less than ideal. So does that just make sense at that level?
Absolutely, yeah. Such a powerful concept to be able to put into play. And so that's been a great exploration from attraction to nurture. And I think in the next episode, Mark, if we look at the flow from nurture through to delivery and then to expansion, I think it'd be a useful place to go for next conversation. Do you think?
Sure, that'd be fun. Yep.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining us in this episode of The Quest in Chiropractor. Please remember to go onto your podcasting app of choice and rate us up to 5 stars, leave us a comment. If you're seeing this on video, please subscribe. And we'll put a link to the innate model questionnaire that Mark mentioned. We'll put that into the show notes for you. And so look out for Mark in the next episode, where we'll be looking at the flow through the rest of the innate model from nurtured through to delivery into expansion. We'll chat to you then.